right, you ready? Well, hello. I'll tell you what, I'm excited tonight. Fisher's Historical Society. We always try to bring you in our Fisher's History chat some information that of different things going on in Fisher's history, and then additionally we expand that out to Indiana and whatever else as we do. Tonight we have a guest, Alex Brooks, who is the community preservation specialist with the Indiana Landmarks. Is that .org or is it it's just Indiana Landmarks?
It is Indiana Landmarks. If you go
Okay.
online, it's indianalandmarks.org.
Okay. All right. Well, very good. Well, so welcome. Thank you for coming. I enjoyed
Thank
having
you.
you here. Um, I was kind of perusing your website and seeing the top 10 most endangered, and you got different ones for sale, different ones for lease. You got
hmm
all kinds of cool stuff. So tell us
Yep.
who you are and who Indiana Landmarks is.
My name is Alex Brooks. I am not originally a Hoosier. I am from Northern Virginia, so near DC, but I was found a full-time job opportunity. I wanted something in history and found an opportunity through Indiana Landmarks. We are from what I've been told, the largest statewide preservation nonprofit in America. So we
Wow,
operate
cool.
statewide throughout the country or throughout the state, and we cover the whole state, but we kind of are broken up into different regions. Our offices. So my specific one, I work in our main kind of Indianapolis office, but my jurisdiction is sort of what we call the donut counties, so kind of the counties around Marion.
Right.
So including Hamilton and Fishers. So pretty much most stuff other than Indianapolis that's between Kokomo and Bloomington.
So what is the Indiana Landmarks goal? What is their mission? Tell me what they're all up about. Because my guess, a lot of people haven't heard of you.
Right. Our goal is to preserve. I'm sure there's a more formal way to say it. Definitely to preserve the state's history through preserving its historic structures and sort of enriching communities through that process. So not just saving buildings for building's sakes, but enriching the communities by saving buildings and structures. So
And so, how do you go about finding them? How do you go about what do you do? What do you actually do? I got your names. I got like I said, but how do you guys
Mhm.
go about doing what you do?
Well, it depends. Sometimes people find us and through referrals or, hey, I heard you guys did this, or a friend recommended this. Can you guys help with this project? So I want to give people credit because sometimes they present us with opportunities to help. So it's not always on we can't always claim credit, but on our end, um, I sort of, there's a variety of things. Sometimes it's through what's known as Section 106. So in the National Preservation Act of 1966, there was a clause in there called Section 106 about agencies being informed for certain transportation projects if they might interfere with historic buildings or properties. So we are given the opportunity to be brought on as consultants with various different types of projects, transportation projects. So recently, it's been a lot of um, roundabout buildings, which don't cover that much area. So those often aren't a huge issue. But so that's one. Another is through different, if there's a commission, a historic preservation commission there's various throughout the state that we are involved in staffing and helping create agendas and doing minutes and communicating with commissioners on. In Hamilton, the Carmel Commission is one I work with. Um, there's also somewhat more informally Main Street groups across the country or well, I guess across the country, across the state that we don't always have as formalized of a relationship with, but we definitely keep in touch with to know what's going on. There's there's certain buildings that maybe we in the past helped give a loan to or help assist in the preservation of that we then put legal covenants on which sort of help us to make sure the building, if it's being sold, falls in the right hands of an owner who wants to preserve the building in the future, keep its historic character, or also means we do an annual inspection of those buildings. So I personally often like to do those inspections in the spring when it's not too hot or too cold outside when I'm walking around the house. And there's also, we do various events throughout the year. Obviously, we have different departments that are more, we have events not daily, but several times a week in our specific building. But then for kind of the preservation wing of our organization, we do various events. One is a holiday open house for our sponsors. And another one, which is actually coming up this weekend, is a home tour of mid-century modern homes called Back to the Future. That um, is a home tour of different mid-century homes, and it's been throughout the state. This weekend's actually in Fort Wayne, so I'll be going up there. So
Okay.
that's a bit of what we do.
So how do you guys get your funding? I mean, is it government grants? Is it just donors? Where's the funding coming from for all this?
Um, we have various donors and sponsors. The Lilly Foundation has been a great benefactor for us, but we also have um, membership in Indiana Landmarks of people who um, subscribe to our magazine, but then hear from us as well. So those donors, no matter the size, are also people who help keep us afloat as well. So
Okay.
we in this time of somewhat uncertainty in terms of a lot of historic organizations, especially those who do have federal funding, are either losing it or not having as much as they previously thought. We were kind of lucky to be able to, not that we're completely impervious from what's going on, but have a firm footing going forward.
Okay. So do you go in and do you guys, take over the project of preservation, or do you coach people on how to do it? How do you guys get involved in all this stuff?
A bit of both. Obviously, we couldn't have the bandwidth to handle every project everywhere. I mean, we have a statewide staff of, I believe, somewhere in the 40s. So obviously, we can't do everything. So sometimes, obviously, there's projects we do handle ourselves. Sometimes it is sort of coaching or assisting, depending on how hands-on on the project in different situations. So it kind of depends on the project.
Okay. So when someone comes to you with stuff, now how we met, I believe, is you were coming to our Fishers Historical Society
Mm,
to talk about the Kincaid House. That's that
mm,
everyone wants to figure out how to fix, and
mhm,
it's got issues that I don't know if that's for one thing, we are in a city that our mayor doesn't really like anything old, so that kind of puts us
mhm.
in a kind of a trick box, so but. And are you running into that situation in all these towns that are trying to reinvent themselves into small little Disneylands that don't want to keep any of this historic stuff, or how do you guys go up against that kind of stuff?
Um, I mean, it definitely depends. Sometimes, and this is going well before my time. Frankly, sometimes we're almost too late in some situations where, like you said, towns transform themselves into these mini Disneylands or some version of that, and then clearly the force of preservation weren't able to save a bunch of homes or districts, and the transformation happens kind of without, or not without pushback, but maybe not without enough. So we try to hold that back as much as possible, but obviously there's, depending on the community, limits to what we can do. So sometimes it's a matter of working with the people and who might want to institute change and try make them as concurrent with the buildings, surrounding buildings, or buildings that were there historically, or color scheme or something. So new development isn't so stand out like a sore thumb, for lack of a better phrase. So, but yeah, it's kind of depends community to community, and it kind of just matters town to town. You can never necessarily predict it in terms of, even in terms of like party line or other divisions you might think of in terms of which community or which elected officials are interested in preservation, which aren't. So that's, as cliche as it sounds, our organizations relationships are very big and important. So maintaining those with people, I think, can help not always deliver what we want, but sometimes get better alternatives than we would otherwise. So
Well, I know myself that one of my favorite trips I ever took was in Boston and walking through that old, the historic trail and
mhm,
going through and seeing, 300-year-old buildings that were a Subway shop now, but they were still,
mhm.
the building was still there and it still had the character and the look, and the streets were the narrow little streets and stuff like that. It's just wonderful to be able to do that. But that seems to be something that Indiana doesn't seem to have a lot of uh,
Mhm.
situations. I know there's places, like Irvington, you've got different places that are doing what they can to retain things. But so I just didn't know how you guys were swimming up that stream. So
Yeah, there's, I guess the phrase adaptive reuse is what we often use in that case of buildings that are used for a different purpose than they were before, but now have the building itself remains, but what's going on inside is different. Like I'm thinking of, I believe is it St. Joseph's Brewery in Indianapolis that was a
yes,
church but is now a
yeah.
brewery. That's one I can think of. We have a building we have a covenant on in Columbus, Indiana, that was a pump house that is now a restaurant.
Oh, it's awesome too. It's got that
Mhm,
deck over the river there and stuff.
mhm.
I love that place. But yeah.
There's, I believe that, and we're not, I don't know if we're as involved in this one. I think there's a historic church also in Columbus that I believe it will now be one of their libraries. So I think sometimes the hurdle can be moving past, I guess, binary thinking of either this building must be used for what it's historically been used for, or it must be torn down. Whereas I think a lot of times we try to show that this building can stand, but maybe have a different use than it was
Well,
before.
I love
So
what some when they take the Carnegie libraries and turn them into a
yes.
restaurant. They've done things like that, but they've retained the library. They
Mhm.
retained that building, retained the history of it, and what have you. I mean, what was that for the turn of the century, pretty much? So,
Yeah, that's one thing I will admit I wasn't as well aware before I got this position of the history of the nationwide Carnegie Library system, then how Indiana had almost over indexed in terms of how many they got. And then I learned a lot about it last year when we worked on a project with getting a loan to I guess, further north in Hamilton County, the town of Atlanta, which is in the process of adapting a former Carnegie Library into their town hall. So we now have a covenant on that building to make sure it keeps its historic character. But that's a case of a case where we were able to intervene financially to help a government entity find a new use for a building. So,
yeah, I don't have any problem with making an adaptation of turning them into something else, but
mhm.
keeping that history of their. I was just in Greentown Sunday. Friends wanted us to come there to this little restaurant they found. And first of all, I was extraordinarily jealous because they have a history society building, and then they have an annex. I'm like, oh my God, Fishers! I would love to have one of
Mhm.
these. But right next to it, more or less, they had a little gas station, one of those little bitty, kind of like little bitty tiny stone high arch, gabled gas station. There's a real estate office, but it still had all that character. And then down the street they had, and I personally am a big fan of Sinclair gas stations because when I was a little kid, driving through the dark, my grandparents used to tell me look for the green and white, so I'd look for the green and white for the Sinclair station. But they have a Sinclair station there that looks like you just walked in 1920 or 1940 or whatever it is. It's all painted up. It looks perfect. It's an HVAC company now, where they have
Mhm.
the big dinosaur, they have the Sinclair, and the entire building is painted exactly, to what it was. And I think that's seriously cool, so
Mhm.
that you can benefit and use it for today's use, but still keep. We walk by and go, oh my God, look at that. That's
Mhm.
that's what it used to be, so so are you having success with some of that, or
Yes, I mean, actually, we have a covenant on the Greentown Historical Society building. So I done an inspection up there a few months ago. So they're a case of a town where we help their historical society preserve those buildings, and then they do a great job at continuing to maintain them throughout the years. And then, yeah, you even mentioned, I think, an office that reminded me of there. Like, I believe we have a covenant on a home in Greenfield that was a historic home, but is now a state farm office. So again,
Yeah.
there's multitudes of uses for these buildings, and I think sometimes the issue is just getting people to realize that and not think that must be demolished for something new to go there.
Well, it's like you were talking about the pump house down there in Columbus. That's such a cool place, and it's a cool old building. You still have the feel of the history of it, but you're
Mm-hmm.
using it for a pretty nice little restaurant there. So as far as that
Mm-hmm.
goes, so those are some pretty cool things, and like I said, I look forward to seeing people embracing that. There's a little place in Evansville that I stumbled on. My son and I were down there for a convention, and we were just looking for a cigar bar, which we couldn't find anything. We finally found this, and it just opened. It's called Fidel's, but there's a restaurant bar in an old car factory, okay, that's there, and above it is this place called Fidel's. You actually go up we were kind of like, what is this place? We were going up like a fire uh, escape ladder or stairs going up to this steel door. It kind of looked like nothing. It was a little bitty, tiny little sign that said Fidel's in neon. But you walked in, it was like a 1930s speakeasy. It was
Mm-hmm.
really very, very cool. And but again, part of why it was so cool is it was this old antique building that had all that character and all that stuff, which made that place, extraordinarily desirable to be, so anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of your projects that you're trying to work on right now? Maybe is there anything in Hamilton County you're working on, or
Um, trying to think Hamilton specifically.
well, you talked about Atlanta, but
I mentioned Atlanta. There's our continued work with the Carmel Historic Preservation Commission, which has kind of the biggest thing we do with that is there's a facade grant program that gives out grants to homes that are on the historic survey in Carmel, that certain exterior changes to homes can be given grant fundings through the commission. So we just got through grading the spring round, and then there's another round later in the fall. So we're currently in the process of, we have the archives going back to 2016 of different grants we've approved through that. But then we realized we maybe those, it's not wrong to have those in our files, but maybe also to have those online on the survey to show here's different homes that have received grants in the past. So we're in the process of this summer of putting some of that information on the website as well. And also in the process of there was a large addition to that survey of historic buildings in Carmel as well in 2021, but that is yet to be approved by the city council. But one of the stipulations for their approval is notification of all the homeowners. So we're in the, as you might imagine, it takes a while to get over 1,000 names and for addresses, et cetera, to send that out. So that's another long-term project there as well.
okay, yeah. So are like for instance, I'm trying to think what I was going to say, but there is some of the different places that I think are on. Well, okay, here's a question. When you say historic, explain to me what that means to you guys. Okay, it was built in the 1800s? Is it maybe it was built you were talking about you're doing a mid-century modern or mid-century showcase. So is it time period? Is it something that's significant happened there? What's your kind of your targeted thing?
It sometimes depends. For example, I believe the Department of Interior, like the rough rule of thumb is 50 years is the limit for something to be considered historic. But then sometimes that changes. Sometimes there's buildings that are over 50 years old, but they've been changed or altered so much that it's almost hard to call them historic, or they are, but not, they don't necessarily represent the period they were built in. So it kind of depends, but or sometimes there's even buildings that are given exceptions. For example, we currently help upkeep a Frank Lloyd Wright house in Lafayette called Samara that apparently went on the National Register about 20 years earlier than it was before it turned 50, before it was eligible, because it was considered that unique architecturally.
Because it's Frank
Or
Lloyd
for
Wright. Yeah.
or there's actually a building in right near it's technically in Carmel, but it's near the border with Indy off 460, not 460, off US 31. That was designed by the architect Michael Graves, that was built in 94, so by no means 50 years old yet, but was considered so architecturally unique that it was put on that Carmel survey earlier than it might have been otherwise. So sometimes architectural distinctness like that can make something be considered historic even quicker than it would be chronologically speaking. So it somewhat depends case by case, but there's some rough parameters for how things are decided that way. A lot of those decisions are made by the state. I forget which agency off the top of my head. But has county surveys, I believe, of each county in the state of buildings and that are considered historic. The problem is a lot of those state surveys were done a lot of times in the 70s or 80s. So a lot of the buildings on there, some of them have unfortunately been demolished, but B, there's buildings that weren't considered historic then, but are now, that should be on there, but aren't because the surveys were made. The surveys themselves are historic now at this point. So,
Right.
but I know the state has, because they can't do all the counties all at once. They're in the process of revisiting some counties to update some of those surveys, but that obviously is a huge endeavor. It takes a while. So,
Well, it's like, the house I grew up in Noblesville, it was built in 1870. Okay, so it had that, and it was all the hand hewed stuff, the cellar underneath it. But originally, that was like a salt box. It was the old typical narrow, straight up and down. It had 2 rooms upstairs and 2 rooms downstairs. In the 50s, they added a whole back on it, so that really kind of screwed up the historic, thing of the house. Of course, in the 50s now, that's becoming old as well. But anyway, but those, I know that those are some things that they look at as well. As have you messed with it? Have you, as far as some of those things. But
and sometimes you have to make decision of sometimes an addition to a house. It wasn't there originally, but the addition itself becomes old enough that it's considered historic. So then we have to decide, is that considered historic as well? And that can vary case by case as well.
yeah. So what I was going to say, if you don't mind, why don't I go ahead and I'm going to do a screen share and go to your website, because I think it's kind of cool stuff that's on there, and maybe you can kind of walk us through this a little bit. But so this is what I was looking at here, and I see that some of the things you're talking about, places that you can start doing things. It looks like you got some churches in here. You've got some Black Heritage Preservation. Are you doing anything with the community up in, is it Atlanta? It was one of the first Black communities up there.
Do you mean Robert Settlement?
Yes.
Yes, we definitely have a long relationship with them. Not like a covenant or anything necessarily, but we've written about them. They're involved in our Black preservation program as well. We had a Juneteenth event there a few years ago. So yeah, we definitely have a relationship with it.
Yeah, I was gonna say Brian Glover, I know, does stuff up there, and he and I went to high school together. So
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
I've met him.
Yeah. So, and I know that he's very involved in that particular program up there. So, but so I'm sitting here looking at some of the things that you've got going on here. Oh, this is cool. The Marion's Firestone Station. But anyway, so you've got some different things that you're trying to do. Wow, look at this. So, what is this place down here? This looks like a A-frame church, and there's some houses around a lake. Not sure what that is, but anyway. But I noticed on here too that you've got like uh, one your top 10 most endangered, which I
Yes.
thought was an interesting story. So you've got, this Bethlehem Healing Temple in Gary, and then a polygon. I don't think I've ever seen a polygonal. I've seen round
Hmm.
barns. But so so what are you doing with these? I mean, these are ones that are your top 10 most endangered. Are you in the process of you know working with people to try to save them now, or?
Yes. So the top 10 list or 10 most list is probably one of the more notable things we do as an organization. So every year we release a list of projects that we consider 10 most endangered of buildings throughout the state that we feel like need help. Sometimes there's carryover of a building can be on the list one year and then it's on there the next. Sometimes there's ones like you see historic fraternal lodges
Yeah.
that encompass more than one building because we see, certainly in my region, others as well, of former fraternal lodges that are looking for that adaptive reuse of okay, if it's no longer used as a lodge, what could the use for this building be in the future? So,
Well, it's like old
um,
schools. I think could be cool stuff as well. Some of those old,
mhm,
old high schools or old, whatever.
mhm.
But I saw
So yeah,
one.
and these are collected. We try to have as much representation from the different regions as well on this list as well.
Then I saw you have some for sale. So
Yes, we have a real estate committee that goes over historic properties such as this one that could be are on sale and that could be that we would like to fall into the right hands of someone who wants to help preserve the building in the
are these
future.
ones where people just, or maybe even a realtor contact you about getting this listed in here, or how does that work?
This specific process I'm not as involved in to be
Okay.
sure, so it might be
So
a
I
bit
didn't
of
know.
both, but I don't know for sure.
Well, I saw on the thing here says advertise your property. So there's a place where you can do something on that. So that's pretty cool. So our realtor friends should be aware of this too.
Mhm.
So that could possibly be a way of doing something there. So you got tours and events. Okay, very cool. Lots of stuff here. Anthonyum, French Lick, West Baden, um,
Mhm.
private tours. So yeah, so what is the thing that you want people to know about?
Um, to some degree, it is just simple as we exist and care about the preservation of historic structures in this state. Because sometimes, a lot of times, I hear people maybe they might not need our help this moment, but maybe they have a friend or someone who has a historic building they're trying to upkeep that could use our help that they could be a referral to. So sometimes um, just getting the word out can itself be an issue of just getting eyeballs on stuff, but I've definitely see almost daily like the after effects of that work of how people hear about us from one project or one friend, and then that inspires them to reach out to us for obviously, especially financially speaking, we can't help every single project,
Oh,
but
sure.
sometimes it's a matter of us trying to help, or sometimes it's us pointing them in the right direction to maybe there's this other group that could help you or this other grant or something. So
Well, here's a kind of a cool thing that I doubt if people are aware of, or many people are. Historic sites and rental venues where people can rent these facilities for, maybe weddings or what have
mhm.
you, or business conferences or meetings or what have you. So that's are these places that you guys are overseeing, or are they ones that you just give them the uh, space to advertise here?
It's ones we're overseeing. So if you scroll to the bottom, that one on the far right, Veristow, I believe I'm pronouncing that right. I believe is in the southeastern part of the state that we oversee. And then the other two on that page were our main building, Indiana Landmark Center, and the Morris Butler House, which is right next door. And so the Indiana Landmark Center is where the majority of our employees work every day off Central Avenue in Indianapolis, and but that's also used as event space. Like we have pretty consistently several times a week different organizations using it for I'm trying to think, weddings,
Morris Butler.
graduations, trying to think what else,
This is your campus.
mixers, conferences, so all kinds of things have been used in our space. So
Where is this? Here's your. It says
yes,
your place. Where is this?
off Central, so I guess 1201 Central Avenue in Indianapolis. So I don't know if we're technically considered downtown, but we're relatively close.
Very cool. So, you
And
do
that building was formerly, I believe, a Methodist church that
yeah.
we now use as a headquarters of a nonprofit. So we practice what we preach in terms of seeing new uses for buildings. So
Well, you guys are doing some cool stuff, and it's just so if somebody has, I saw on here one thing. Where did it say? Is if you have something you need to have people, be aware of. Here's something, success stories. Let's take a look at this. Endangered no more. 10 most endangered. Our Republic. Where's Old Republic? Where's that?
um
New Carlisle.
I do not believe that one's in my region, so I
Okay.
don't know for sure.
So it shows where it's been updated and things like that. Oh, look at this. West Baden's Baptist Church. Washington County Courthouse. That's amazing.
Mhm.
This one was one I was going to bring up. I really thought it was cool what they've done with Busch Stadium, where they've turned that into, what is it, condos or whatever down there.
Mhm.
Because that's a cool place. Plainfield Diner. Oh, you guys were involved in that?
Yeah, so that's a building that we helped move as well. Because
Oh,
sometimes the way we work with, unfortunately, it's not our first option, but sometimes the way we try to work with local entities is sometimes they want to preserve a building but want the space the building's on. So sometimes, and it's not an easy process, but they move a building to a new location. So this is
well, what's
before my
cool?
time, but that's what would happen down in Plainfield with the Oasis Diner, and we got covenants put on it, and now annually I go inspect it to make sure it's being kept in good condition, which it very much is. So it's and I
Well, it looks
the
like
food is good as well.
what they
So
did
it's
is they took the old diner and attached it to a much bigger building to make it functional today, but it
mm,
still keeps the all the everything intact,
mhm.
which is awesome. Well, this is so cool, So
Thank you.
yeah, the Busch Stadium, I always thought was great that you guys, because that was such a cool building that they were able to retain that. Central State, they've done pretty good things with that as well. They've been doing things to save that old building. Some of those old buildings down there, a lot of them. So, well, very cool. So, let's see, different places here. Okay, this is the African Heritage groups. So this is some really interesting thing, and I think I saw someplace on here, and maybe I can't figure out where. I saw someplace where you have a place where people can reach out and um, request help.
Yes, I believe that might be under on the top, that orange um banner under contact.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Our head. Yeah, so let us know how we can help. So, well, this is so cool. I'm so thrilled. So, what do you need from people? Do you need, are you going to need, do you need donors? Do you need people that are volunteers? What kind of things can people do
Um,
to support you guys?
we well, I thankful to anyone who is listening, but beyond that, yeah, we definitely do need both members and volunteers. So there's here on the website, there's more information on
Oh,
membership as well, which is admittedly not my department, but we definitely have a robust team that handles membership and the process through for that, which is not very hard to get involved. And volunteers as well is another robust program we have of people who do volunteer for us. So for example, like that mid-century tour we're doing this weekend would not be possible without our volunteer base, in this case, driving 2 hours north to help exhibit a home tour for us. But even closer to Indy, there's Bill, and you mentioned the Athenaeum or other places around the
Well, like the
city
Benjamin
that
Harrison
we
home,
help.
are you involved in that in any way, shape, or form? Or
I believe Benjamin Harrison's its own entity,
okay,
but
and then the
certainly a group that has similar ideals and values to us as
yeah,
well.
then there's
So,
the
and is
and
physically
I'm
very
drawing a
close to our
I'm
headquarters.
drawing a blank. It's right in that same area. Is the propolis? I can't remember what the name of the thing is. It's
Propylium,
yeah,
propylium.
yeah.
Um, I I'm not. I don't know for sure about that
Okay, it's I know that it's kind of a women's organization that's running that one,
one.
but we we went there one time. They had a Valentine's Day special. We went there for dinner, and it was a blast because we got to roam around that place and look, look at all the nooks and crannies of the house as well. So it was a cool thing to go do. So uh, I don't know if they've ever reopened their cafe they have in there. They did used to have a cafe, but I don't know if they've reopened it since COVID.
Mhm.
There are places like this that people need to go find, right? So.
Definitely, yeah.
So well, what would you like to tell people to do to be involved in all this stuff?
I can put I don't know if there's a chat or something for me to put our website
Well, I'll
under
put that
to.
attached to our
Okay, thank you.
thing, so and we'll get that done. I will also this video I will will be on Facebook now. Only leaves them live for 30 days. Okay,
Hmm.
that's just kind of where it is. So we have that, and then we will make this into a YouTube, and it goes onto the Fishers Historical Society
Okay.
YouTube page, so it'll stay there for
Hmm.
as long as YouTube stays around, I guess.
Right.
And then I'll get you a copy of it as well. You can do with it as you please,
All right. Thank you.
but yeah, and we'll tag how to get a hold of you guys and all that kind of stuff into this. So, well, this is excellent, excellent. You guys are doing great work. I'm thrilled that you're out there doing this. I know sometimes you're probably swimming upstream with some of the different,
Sometimes.
yeah. So, but is you're doing great stuff out there, and I'm thrilled to know about these venues that are available for rental and everything else. That I never
Definitely,
knew
yeah.
you guys had that capacity.
Hmm.
So. Well, I really, Allison, I want to thank you so much for sharing with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And so this was fun. So thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all
Thank
for
you, sir.
watching.
All right, bye bye.
Bye.